Good Thursday to you, everyone, in Gov 603. Welcome back to week, boom, 3 and our review of week 2. I got no idea what's going on here with that. It's like a hood, that attaches to the shirt, something, something like that. It's very useful. Go away. No. All right. Good to be here. Wait a minute. Have the Griffin Cup demonstrative of my family's Welsh ancestry. Although, I'm told that's where my relatives are from. I know about as much concerning living in Wales as I do living at the bottom of the ocean, which is absolutely nothing. I'm an American, and that's just the way it is. Okay, so in this video, we are going to take a look at your answers from last week. Now, over the weekend, I will be grading your, it's sinus season for me, like all year round. Okay, so if I sniffle or if I take a tissue, you'll forgive me. Over the weekend, I will be grading your discussion boards to give you a sense of what it is that I'm looking for by way of your answers, and most importantly, conversations, participation with your fellow classmates. All right. As a friendly reminder, if you have not done so already, I need you to post your proposed paper topics, and that it's in the discussion box. It's back in week 2. Okay. Try to be specific. I'll give you some feedback concerning those at the end of this week, so that is tomorrow. But just scanning through them, what I'm seeing is you need specificity. Like Pa, you've written here, my paper topic will be gun violence in the U.S. Okay, like what? Okay, because that's very broad, very big. And look, you do not have to try to cover everything about everything concerning a topic. You just can't. Okay, so to keep yourself from, like bashing your head on the desk, be specific about your topic. All right, but I'll give you more feedback as warranted after tomorrow. Okay, let's take a look at your answers, the questions and your answers from last week, and let me fill in a little bit if I can. Tell you, what I'm really looking for. And remember, these questions that make up the discussion boards, they will form the backbone of your midterm and your final exam. Okay, so, you're going to want to know if you're on the right track or not. All right. Much better. Okay, question number 1. We ask, what defines empirical research and why does it need a design? Joshua, again, you're crushing it this last week. Let's take you because you went first. Empirical research is any research that uses structured observations from the real world to attempt to answer questions. Yeah, okay. And the critical phrase there is structured observations. And I need I'm not saying you, Joshua, but I need everybody to know what that means. So this is a correct answer, but what does that mean? What does structured observations mean? Well, go back to you, Joshua. In other words, identifying a research question and conducting experiments or gathering data aimed at supporting or overturning overturning. And, you can write an hypothesis because and is proper before the letter H, but it's becoming more and more common now. Just drop the and just go with supporting. It always just sounds weird to me, not because you wrote it, Joshua, but just, I sort of was raised with and then and. Supporting or overturning a hypothesis is the basis of the empirical research process. Okay. Yes, and I want to suggest a little tweak. All right. It is not your job as a researcher to either prove or disprove a hypothesis. That's not your objective. I'm not saying this is what you're saying, Josh. I want everybody to understand this. You do not start out to say, I want to support this, I don't want to support this. No. What you start out is, I'm going to test this. And if it is supported, it's supported. If it is not supported, it is not supported. The two outcomes are equal in their importance in conducting research. And in fact, so equal, a lot of the language, it's so equal, it's reflected in the language. A lot of the language around research and empirical research comes to us from German speakers. Okay. And if you had any German, that sort of jumps out at you, because when you're testing a hypothesis, the proper language is the hypothesis was supported, or the null hypothesis was supported. What does that mean? Well, if you say the hypothesis was supported, then, if you say there's a relationship between, this causes this, the hypothesis was supported, this causes this. The null hypothesis, NULL, was supported. That's saying this does not cause this. And this comes to us through German, because in German, it's common that if you want to say something isn't something, I mean, you would say, like, I don't know, bring out one of my little favorite statuettes here. Okay. So this is a statuette of a bear, not a dog. All right. So in German, if you wanted to say this is not a dog, you would say das ist und Hund, which is the word for dog, nicht. And if you translate that literally, it translates into this is a dog not. So in empirical research, you'd say the null hypothesis is supported. In other words, the negative hypothesis is supported. The hypothesis is supported not. All right. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Really, really important. You're not out to prove yay or nay. You're out to test support or no support. Be an investigator, not an advocator. Okay. Good answer, though, Joshua. Let's see. Let's quickly take a look at somebody else for that answer. Ronald, we're just going to call you Ron. Huntington Klein defines empirical research as any research that uses structured observations from the real world to attempt to, that's my problem, not your writing, to attempt to answer questions. It is dependent upon methodology that evaluates a hypothesis objectively. Excellent. Based on actual observations. Okay, research design is a methodology, a roadmap, good way to put it, of how a researcher intends to answer their questions, hypothesis with strategies. What strategies will be utilized? What methodologies will be used? Excellent. Research design assists the researcher in knowing the validity of their hypothesis if the right questions are being asked. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, that is, as they say, over in the British Isles, spot on, Ronald. I'm also a very good Anglo-Saxon name, by the way, Ronald. Okay, question number 2. Why is it hard for some researchers to see their blind spots? And oh man, does this happen a lot? Camillus, let's go to you. Researchers often struggle to identify their blind spots due to social factors. One significant problem is that human cognition is inherently limited and flawed, so we are often unaware of our ignorance or our bias. That's important to throw in there too. This challenge is further exacerbated by norms that promote overconfidence and discourage acknowledging mistakes. To overcome these limitations, it is crucial to cultivate humility, recognizing that our beliefs might be wrong. However, fostering this trait can be challenging because it requires us to acknowledge and actively explore our spots. I think you mean blind spots. And by that, we don't mean, I can't see. But what is it that you're predisposed to want to see or not to want to see? Okay, overcome our spots while being receptive to learning from others, which may go against the ingrained human tendencies or our ingrained beliefs. This is becoming more and more difficult for researchers as we move into the 21st century. And part of the reason why that's the case is, we're only as good as thinkers as we're encouraged to be. I mean, that's just a very fundamental characteristic of human behavior. People do what you encourage them to do, whether you pay them or you praise them or whatever. And they tend not to do what you discourage them to do. You penalize them, you don't pay them, you criticize them. That's just human behavior. In the digital space that we spend a lot of time in, much of that digital space is organized by the providers, those who want your eyeballs and your clicky clicks to play to your biases. So whatever you happen to be culturally, politically, ethnically, geographically, providers of content, and this is everybody from, here we are, YouTube, which is owned by Google, to Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Yahoo News, Fox, MSNBC. What's the other one? What are the big three? Fox, MSNBC, and CNN. Okay. Two people, let's just use CNN as an example. Two people could be looking at a feed from the same provider and see different stories, because what the provider is trying to do is to get you to click on something. And one of the fastest ways to get you to click on something is play to your bias. And then that's, there are two common tactics in the digital space to get you to act. All right. One is to play to your bias, and then the other one is to frighten you or alarm you. Maybe I'll put it in the announcement. I've recently written an article designed, for everybody, but aimed at Christians, as to what we should be doing about it. Because look, bad things are going to happen. We're going to have tough times. Okay. But I strongly recommend that as Christians, we inoculate ourselves against stress and develop what I call a muscular Christianity. All right. So it's becoming more and more difficult for thinkers, because they're being raised in a space that's constantly pandering to their biases, to be aware that they're having their biases pandered to. Let me recommend a book, as I'm wont to do as we go through these discussions. If you want to see, how pervasive this issue of bias is, and it's not a product of the 21st century. I'm not trying to suggest that at all. Okay. If you want to see how pervasive it is, it goes way back in thinking and empirical research. Read this book, Thomas Kuhn's, and that's Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. All right. And in this book, Dr. Kuhn, who's a physicist, and this was published in the early 60s, 1962, says, you think that scientific discoveries are the product of, hard work in the lab, and then someone comes on new evidence and they go, waha! And then all of the other scientists go, oh, that's genius. Why didn't we think of that? Pat, 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 that person on the back. No. What Kuhn details in this book is how groundbreaking, real complete, worldview shifting discoveries were accepted, not because of an accumulation or a demonstration of evidence. No. But because of maneuvering and politics. In other words, dealing with people, researchers, who are paralyzed by their blind spots and just refuse to see what's right smack in front of them. And that is the history of science. It's not this tremendously objective, everybody's out to find the truth. And I'm not taking a political position. I will if you ask me. I'm not taking a political position by saying this, but that still applies today. Everything from climate science to so-called gender identity. Okay, it's not an accumulation of the evidence. Okay, so read Thomas Kuhn. It's a good read. It's something that you need to work out a little bit, because it's thin, but it's a dense book, but it's well worth your time. Okay, question number 3. How do you formulate a hypothesis? How is a hypothesis different from a research question? Create a hypothesis and post it with your answers. Okay, a number of you struggled with this. And now, please, if I pronounce anybody's name wrong, send me an email and correct me. Okay, I think it's P-A, right? Before we talk about how we can formulate a hypothesis, we'll need to define what a hypothesis is. A hypothesis is an explicit statement that indicates how a researcher thinks phenomenon of interest are related, okay, variables. In other words, a hypothesis is an educated guess, and a researcher's question is a question that has the possibility of being answered. Okay, I'm going to add here, not the possibility of being answered. You're going to answer the question, and it may be answered in the affirmative, or it may be answered in the negative, but you're just looking for the answer. You're not looking for one or the other. And I'm not picking on you, Pa, the author of this response. I want everybody to understand that. Johnson et al. Does not explicitly state how we can form a hypothesis, so additional online resources were found to answer the question. According to Grammarly, the Grammarly article by Elise, I have no idea who this is, we can form a hypothesis by asking a question, conducting background research, determining our independent-dependent variable, phrasing it as an if-then statement, collecting data, and finally writing the hypothesis with a bit of confidence. Okay, 2 things from this. This is pretty good, but 2 things. Number 1, be careful of what you find online. All right, one of the things that, no, not one of the things, I would say the thing, your main task as master students is to learn how to be critical thinkers, because you quite literally have the universe at your fingertips. I mean, all access to all known by jumping in through your computer. All right. So finding the information that you need, I should say, finding information that you feel you need, that's not a problem. Your problem is being able to discern good information from bad information, helpful information from unhelpful, accurate from inaccurate. Okay. And, even the way a search engine works is no guarantee to you. Of a search engine, basically, sometimes companies pay to have their answers land at the top. So it's who's provided the most money. That becomes the right answer for what you're looking for. And then outside of those people who pay, the way search engine works, fundamentally, if you just kind of, bust it down, is the search engine finds the answer that everybody has given to a particular question, the most people, and that goes up towards the top. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. It's a simple proposition when you're dealing with some types of information, like what is 2 + 2? All right, well, I think it's pretty safe to say for all the people online answering this question, the majority of them are going to come back with the answer of 4. 2 + 2 is 4. But what if the question is more subjective? Okay, that becomes a little dicier. So be careful about sources that you use. Okay, so let's take a look at your hypothesis. When college students are required to complete a final exam, it will cause excessive stress on students on top of what they already have to complete. Okay, that's not bad. Let me give you the very simple, straightforward operational definition of a hypothesis. And then this is one I think you can use. A hypothesis makes a prediction about the relationship between 2 events. We call those variables, and the hypothesis has these following 3 elements. Got to have these 3 elements, okay? Whatever you like, European stuff. Number 1, it has at least 2 variables. So in here, okay, and you don't want more than 2. When college students are required to complete a final exam, okay, so college students taking final exam, that's 1. It will cause stress on students, that's 2, on top of what they already have to complete. Okay, that's 3. Take out that second bit, okay? So you want to have 2 variables. You want to make a prediction about the causal relationship of this variable with that, and this one does it. Having to complete an exam increase the level of stress, and you want to have that prediction have a direction. Okay. So, you could, in this case, it's having to complete the exam raises stress. And could you study this the other way? Say, when you raise someone's stress, then they will complete an exam. Maybe. All right. But that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at requiring them to complete the exam raises the stress, not raising the stress as a way to make them complete the exam. All right. You understand? 3 elements, 2 variables, a prediction about a causal relationship. This causes that, and a direction. All right. You stick with that for definition of a hypothesis. You can't go wrong. Okay. Question number 4. Why should good research begin with a literature review? Now, this is an important question for you because you're doing your papers, and I want you to make sure that you have a literature review and not a annotated bibliography. All right. And I haven't gone into a lot of what that is because I want you to look it up and do some reading. All right. And it'll sink into the old noggin. Susan, let's take a look at you. It's extremely helpful for a researcher to begin their research through a literature review because most initial research topics are too broad to be plausible. And the conduct of a literature review helps the researcher narrow down the topic. This is true. Additionally, and now, I would recommend for your own sanity that you narrow down the topic first, okay? Because if it's a really broad topic, then you end up with piles and piles of books and articles all around you, and you're just like, where do I start? Narrow your topic down. Additionally, conducting a literature review requires that the writer do a great deal of research on the subject, making it so that they are extremely well informed in regards to their topic. The key element of an effective literature review are to focus on the concepts, ideas, and methods shared across the research. It is important that research chooses a specific yet still researchable question that provides enough relevant scholarly sources to adequately inform the literature review. Okay, good answer. Okay, let me add just a little bit to that. Think of your literature review as, imagine you stepped into a party and you hear an interesting conversation from over the corner. It sounds interesting. And you step up, okay? And you've got an opinion about what's being said. It's in your best interest just to listen for a little bit. Okay, who's saying what about what? And the reason you want to listen is, number 1, you want to be informed as to what's already been said. And number 2, you want to be informed as to who is saying it. If they've got a clear bias, yeah. Because number 3, if you just jump in and you go, I'm all, and another way to see this is when people in the conversation are like, yeah, dude, we talked about that like 20 minutes ago. Where you been? Right? You don't want to look foolish as a researcher. Get a sense for what the conversation around your research topic is. And then, as a researcher, look for any gaps. What's not being covered that in your opinion is important? Maybe it's covered in a way that's incomplete. Maybe it's dead wrong. Okay, and you can start with your opinion, but you have to substantiate that through either data or other people's data. It can't be just, well, I think so. Okay, this is why you want to have a literature review for you. Now, for your reader, use your literature review to set the stage. This is why this is an issue. This is the part of the issue that's the most important part. This is what we're going to be focusing on. This is how we're going to be focusing on it. Okay, and you're citing other people's works to say, this is what the discussion is. This is how, what they're getting right or leaving out or not leaving out or emphasizing or not emphasizing enough. This is how we're going to attack it. Okay. And I tell you, the best way to do this is start with a strong hypothesis. A strong hypothesis will clearly indicate to you what you've got to dig out for a literature review. Because if your hypothesis is, forcing students to take final exams, raise their anxiety level. Okay. You've got to look at research on what causes anxiety, on how anxiety relates to exam performance, has anybody researched that, in fact, taking exams raises anxiety? I'm asking obvious bonehead questions, but you get the drift. Okay. So a good hypothesis will limit what you've got to look at. It will tell you. And then a good hypothesis is going to tell you how you should construct your study. If you say, taking exams raises anxiety level. Well, you've got to figure out a way to measure anxiety before and after an exam, or ask people, how does knowing that you have to take an exam make you feel? Right? You've got to construct a survey. Okay, what kind of questions are you going to ask? All right, because you have to get data that will help you establish a relationship between exam and anxiety. So a good hypothesis will shape your methodology as you go forward. And then finally, a good hypothesis will narrow your scope of research, so you're not trying to describe the whole world, which you can't. Okay, let me close and have you remember this, everybody. All research has its limitations, all of it. There are two limitations that are common to all research: time and access. How much time do you have to access the data that you need to complete the research? And in your case, you have the length of a semester. That's it. So I don't expect that you're writing the Encyclopedia Britannica on your topic, because you can't. I couldn't. I'm a good writer. I write all the time. I couldn't write that much. Focus, narrow it down, get a solid hypothesis, start looking for literature that helps you explain why this is a deal, why should I care as a reader, and then that will guide your methodology. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the weekend. I think about you. I pray about you. I hope you are well, and I will see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.